Donington Park plays host to the latest instalment of the Dunlop Endurance Championship and marks the midway point in the 2018 season. Within the sprint category of the championship, the first 3 rounds of the season have been largely dominated by the ABBA-racing Mercedes of Richard Neary, but his absence this weekend would open up the possibility of victory to the likes of Michael Igoe and Adam Wilcox, whose JMH Automotive Porsche had twice finished second to Neary in the previous round at Alton Park. Having topped the times in the morning practice session, the Ferrari 488 of John Seal looked to be another car capable of victory. And with 3 Britcar titles between them, Ross Wiley and David Mason would be hopeful of challenging for at least a podium in the sister 458. A number of other entries arrived at Donington with a real chance of taking a category win, including the unique Tyrrhanis driven by the always rapid Johnny McGregor and the track-focused run KTM Crossbow that Mike McCullum and Sean Cooper had guided to its maiden victory at Alton Park. And this weekend would mark the debut for a second KTM entered by the team, this one driven by father and son duo Sandy and Ross McEwen.
We've done a few other UK championships for a few years. We're attracted to kind of the Saturday only, so you get a bit more time at the weekend. Loads of racing in one day, not much sitting around, so it's ideal. Sean and Mike have had a great season so far in Britcar, so hoping to continue that with the 2 KTMs out this weekend. Felt I strung a really good lap together for my first time competitively in the car. The guys did a great job putting it together. Weather's good, what's not to like?
The weekend would also mark the Britcar debut of Luke Davenport, returning to racing following a huge accident in the BTCC some 12 months earlier.
Bit last minute, so I usually coach a few guys up and down the paddock here, and then Alex's dad asked me to drive with him today, so nice little surprise, and luckily I have my race kit in the car. Well, I've got hopefully enough experience now to be able to jump in and out of stuff, so it's quite a good challenge to come in and try and get on the pace straight away. I haven't really been around the Britcar paddock before, so it's great to see so many cars here. It's professional looking grid. I'm used to the Dunlop tyre from what I did in touring cars, so it's not too much of a shock to the system.
During qualifying for the first of the day's 2 races, it was the Synchro Motorsport Honda of Alan James which proved to be the fastest of the entries in Endurance Class 5. Meanwhile, the HSG Sport Ford Focus of Richard Woods and Mark Wakefield set the pace in the equivalent class within the sprint category. But not everyone enjoyed as much success. The Porsche shop run 911 of Ian Heward and Steve Cheetham swapping ends under braking for Redgate Corner. And having endured a much bigger crash during the previous day's test session, the number 24 Team Hard Ginetta of Sam Randon and Simon Rudd was only able to take part in qualifying after a Herculean effort by the team.
We had a bit of an off going through Craners, and literally the car had to just be rebuilt overnight. The boys had to go back down to the factory, which is about 4 hours away, but M25, I think they took them about 7 hours. So I walked in this morning, some of them haven't even been to bed. So they've done an absolutely mega job to get us out there, and we've got to try and bring back some silverware for them. Our race pace, I think, between us will be good, so we'll definitely be looking to challenge for the win.
With an impressive entry of 31 cars, qualifying would be critical, and the KTM of Mike McCullum and Sean Cooper slotted into the top 6.
It's fairly different to Alton. Alton's got a lot of camber changes, elevation changes, and fairly bumpy in some sections. Here, again, has camber and elevation changes, but it much smoother and more flowing. So generally, the cars, we run a bit stiffer. Craner Curves is a fantastic section, and in this car particularly, I think it really suits it. One of its strengths is particularly mid-corner speed, and it's very quick down there. We're doing, I think, about 130 just before the braking zone.
The Moss Motorsport BMW of John Watt and Christian Prosser was just 33 thousandths of a second quicker than the KTM. And 4th fastest in qualifying was John Seal aboard his Ferrari 488. He would share the second row with Michael Igoe and Adam Wilcox in what was the highest placed Porsche on the grid. For once, Ross Wiley failed to put the number 7 Ferrari on pole, but after struggling with the car in testing, second on the grid wasn't a bad return. It did though mean that we'd be treated to the unfamiliar sight of a bright yellow Tyrrhanis on pole position.
Yeah, I'm pleased with that, really. Very, very busy out there. Britcar have done a great job of getting a lot of cars on the track, but it's a short lap and it was very, very busy. So I got lucky with quite a clear lap and it paid off. I did miss the first corner a bit, so I think there's a little bit more to come, but other than that, it was pretty clean. 32 cars on a lap that's just over a minute. That's a car every 2 seconds if they're evenly spread, so it's going to be very, very busy out there.
Here's confirmation of the fastest times from qualifying and how the front of the grid would line up for the first of the day's races. In Britcar, variety is the spice of life, and no fewer than 6 different marques were represented within the top 10. Part of an eclectic grid of GTs, sports cars and touring cars that were lining up for action as the marshals readied the track for the 50-minute sprint race. The rolling start got underway, led by McGregor's Tyrrell, with Ross Wiley's Ferrari and Michael Igoe's Porsche for company, and the white and blue Ferrari of John Seal just behind. On the brakes, and it was McGregor leading into Redgate Corner for the first time, with the BMW of Christian Prosser fending off the 2 KTMs for 5th place. Over the crest at Hollywood, it was side by side for second, with the Ferrari just about edging clear as they plummeted down the Crater curves for the first time, kicking up the cement dust that had covered an oil spill from the previous race. The heavily repaired number 24 Team Hard Ginetta of Randon and Red ran 13th, behind Dave Bennett's Porsche. By the start of lap 2, the lead group had split themselves into 2 pairs, with Prosser 5th in the BMW and Ross McEwen 6th in the first of the KTMs, having found a way past Mike McCullum. Sarah Moore was 8th in the first of the Ginettas, just ahead of brother Ed, and further back 2 more Ginettas ran even closer as Lee Frost squeezed down the inside of the 24 car. Darron Lewis right behind the pair of them in the white 285 machine. Up front, 2017 champion Wiley continued to harass McGregor for the lead, both edging clear of Igoe's Class 2 leading Porsche. Prosser's 5th place BMW was the leader of Class 4, while the track-focused KTMs ran 1st and 2nd in Endurance Class 3, the same category in which Team Hard teammates Randon and Lewis were now running nose to tail. The battle for 3rd place was also the battle for the lead of Sprint Class 2, Igoe and Seal now teammates after the latter had recently switched from FF Course to the JMH Automotive team. Ed Moore was busy fending off the TCR Seats of Rob Gillam and Martin Byford for 8th place overall. Lee Frost continued to pull away from a lively battle for 12th as the 2 Team Hard Ginettas were now joined by the ex-BTCC Audi of Alex Day and Luke Davenport. Just 10 minutes into the race, Ross Wiley pitted from 2nd place with damage to the front left corner of the Ferrari. As the FF Course team tried to reaffix the front valance, McGregor was left to breathe easy in the race lead. Wiley eventually rejoined 9 laps down, but with the flapping bodywork still causing an issue, the Ferrari would eventually go on to a very rare retirement. The mandatory pit stops were now in full swing. Lee Frost's Butler Motorsport teammate Lucky Cara re-emerging 3 laps down on the overall leader, but on course for a top 10 finish. Meanwhile, John Seal had managed to get his Ferrari up to 2nd place, but Igoe was having none of it and the Porsche would re-emerge ahead before the end of the lap. And there was also a great battle for what was now 5th place between the KTMs of McEwen and McCullum, the Ginetta of Moore and the Seat of Gillam, all glued together as bodywork was sent flying from the Ginetta. Following their pit stops, 2 cars from that battle remained together, as the Tockwith Motorsports Ginetta, now piloted by teenage racer Marmaduke Hall, and the Seat of John Clonis, both closed in on John Seal's Ferrari. And rapidly rising through the order was the 285 Team Hard Ginetta, which Darron Lewis had now handed to teammate Adam Hatfield. 17th on the grid, they were now on course for a possible top 6 finish. Alan James ran in the lead of Class 5 aboard his new for 2018 Honda Civic, ahead of the HSG Ford Focus of Richard Woods and Mark Wakefield, albeit with the former entered into the endurance class, while the latter were part of the sprint category. Enjoying a strong race, Alex Day and Luke Davenport had now propelled Sherman the Audi up from 18th to 8th place and ran 2nd to the Moss Motorsport BMW in Class 4. 9th place overall and leading the invitation class was Lucky Cara, ahead of Lee Frost. But there was disaster for Marmaduke Hall, brake issues and an overheating car leading to this excursion at Hollywood and eventual retirement. A hugely frustrating season for the team that came within a whisker of winning the Sprint Class Championship last year. That helped to promote the TCR Seat of Ashley Woodman into the top 10, but that joy would be short-lived, as shortly afterwards Woodman found himself beached in the gravel trap at McLean's. Having dropped back at the start of the race, the Ginetta G50 of Sarah Moore and Matt Greenwood was back up into the midfield and leading Endurance Class 4, despite having one of the oldest cars in the field. Another driver quietly going about his business was former national quad bike champion Chris Murphy into the lead of Sprint Class 3. into the closing stages, and Johnny McGregor was managing a comfortable 11-second gap in the overall race lead. Sean Cooper had taken over the 262 KTM, the Track Focus team boss now running 6th, with the sister car of Sandy McEwen having slipped back to 12th position. Cooper was also the second highest placed endurance class entry, leading the endurance class, and now 5th overall with Darron Lewis and Adam Hatfield. Following on from Christian Prosser's good work, John Watt was now aboard the Moss Motorsport BMW, the team leading Class 4 and punching well above their weight in 4th place overall. Having lost 2nd place during the pit stop window, the JMH Automotive Porsche of Michael Igoe and Adam Wilcox had dropped to 3rd, and try as he might, the latter couldn't catch John Seal, driving solo in the Ferrari 488. His advantage some 9 seconds, and Seal on course for his best result of the season so far. On course not just for his best result of the season, but his first ever race victory in Britcar was Johnny McGregor. A flawless performance seeing the Taranis over the line, much to the delight of his privately entered Mac G racing team. After 50 minutes of hard-fought racing, let's look at confirmation of the top 10 results. Rudd and Randon recovering well from their testing crash to finish 7th, ahead of the Reflex Racing Audi and the 2 Butler Motorsport Ginettas. Let's catch up on some of the key stories from that encounter, starting with your race winner.
First couple of laps were quite tough because obviously being at the front row there's a lot of oil down Craner curves, so picking my way through that was quite difficult. Obviously being the first one there, it makes it that much more tricky. Ross was right behind me the whole time. I was trying to shake him. He was quite comfortably there, I think, and then I'm not sure what happened, but he fell away in the sort of midway through the race.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shame. It's been an uphill battle since Thursday. We had a small electrical gremlin Thursday morning, which meant we only drove 1 lap. Then we've had a few kind of ongoing issues, and then unfortunately we had an issue with the floor. The floor dropped down, which I lost all the aerodynamics and severe vibrations. So yeah, the team decided to call me in, give it a go to fix it, but unfortunately luck wasn't on our side.
We qualified pretty poor, but as of last year we tend to always race a bit better than we qualify a lot. So it all seemed to come together in the race, to be honest. We were sitting solid lap times, and I got us up into, I think it was into 3rd in class, and then with the pit stop penalties that other people suffered, we come out and I think we won by about 15 seconds. So it's yeah, nice result.
This year, Britcar have consistently attracted grids of over 30 cars, confirming this as the UK's fastest growing endurance racing championship. And here at Donington, tyre partner Dunlop announced an extended 5-year deal to support the championship through to the end of the 2023 season.
We're over the moon about it. It's a good relationship Dunlop have had with Britcar over the years prior to myself and the family owning the business. And they've been approaching us for the last couple of months, and we've signed a deal literally a couple of weeks ago. 5 years is good support from such a brilliant manufacturer. It's great for us to have that security that people know that we're not, they trust us and believe in us. And it's a brand that's known in endurance racing. The product's good. I asked a lot of the drivers before we signed the contract, is this a manufacturing brand that you want? And they did. They rated it, so we were very pleased that they wanted to continue with us for that length of time.
Grid's very strong this weekend as well. Looking to continue that throughout the season?
Oh, definitely, yes. A lot of the teams are obviously championship people. They're not just people coming and choosing it because it's Donington. We're just really pleased. 31 cars this weekend, and the rest of the season's looking very good as well. And next season, we're planning already, so we're on the up, definitely.
Coming up, a look at the second race of the weekend, where the sprint category cars would contest another 50-minute race, but the endurance class cars would attempt to stay on track to complete a full 2-hour enduro for separate championship points. With the grid based on the results of race 1, it was the yellow Taranis of Johnny McGregor on pole, with the white and blue Ferrari of John Seal alongside. Michael Igoe shadowing the pair of them on the run into Redgate Corner aboard his Porsche 911. Another good start for Igoe, giving him an opportunity to get up the inside of the Ferrari into turn 1, potentially giving him the better line into turn 2 at Hollywood. It was a tight squeeze, but Igoe was not for backing off, and the Porsche went through. Holding station in 4th place was Christian Prosser in the BMW, while the orange and yellow Seat of Rob Gillam had made an electric start to go from 11th to 5th. Making the opposite kind of start was the KTM of the McEwens, now playing catch-up after a spin on the green flag lap. Also in bother, Guy Colclough, following a spin at the old hairpin in his DAT Racing Seat Leon. He quickly recovered as the race leader came through to complete his first lap. Seal's Ferrari emerging in second as Igoe's Porsche recovered from a grassy moment at the chicane. In fact, that excursion had been the result of contact after Seal had attempted to overtake him for second. Both recovered and the move appeared to have worked until Seal went straight on into the gravel at Redgate, thanks to the damage sustained in that initial contact. Sadly, a hole in the radiator of the Ferrari meant it was destined to retire. Oblivious to all of this, race leader McGregor was keen to make good his escape, knowing that the Ferrari of Race 1 rival Ross Wiley would likely be carving his way through from the back of the grid. Behind him, Igo was now back up to second, Prosser third in the BMW, Lewis fourth in the white Team Hard Ginetta, from McCullum now in fifth place in the KTM, as John Seal's Ferrari limped back to the pits. A real shame after his excellent second place finish in Race 1. In an attempt to catch the pack following that green flag incident, McEwen suffered a spin down at the old hairpin and was in danger of being lapped already. Holding 8th place, Alex Day was pressing on in the Reflex Racing Audi A4 and just behind the Scarlet Ferrari of Ross Wiley, already up into the top 10. Admittedly, the Class 1 car had more power than most, but still not bad from 28th on the grid. It had taken the Scotsman just 2 laps to gain 19 places. Horsepower or not, a tricky business given the eclectic mix of cars and closing speeds he was now having to deal with. Seal, meanwhile, had made it back to the pits, but despite the efforts of the JMH Automotive team, it was the last we'd be seeing of the Ferrari for today. By lap 4, McGregor had built a 6.6 second lead over Igo's Porsche, but the race leader's biggest concern was the car now in 3rd place, the rapidly approaching FF Corse Ferrari of one R. Wiley Esquire. Also on an absolute mission was Ed Moore. This move on the Chris Brown BMW M4 putting the number 15 Ginetta up to 12th place, rocketing from 27th on the grid. Wiley continued to home in on his next target, Class 2 leader Igo in 2nd place. The Ferrari was lapping over 2.5 seconds per lap quicker than the Porsche, and more significantly, 1.5 seconds per lap quicker than the leading Tiranis. Wiley wasn't quite close enough to lunge at the old hairpin, but the inevitable move would come soon enough as he unleashed the Ferrari's horsepower on the climb up through Schwann's Curve. Ross Wiley and Ed Moore weren't the only drivers making an impression. In less than half a dozen laps, Marcus Fothergill had steered the number 69 Bespoke Cars 911 from 31st to 13th. And then a proper heart-in-mouth moment for Chris Brown as his BMW veered onto the grass at high speed down the Craners. A puncture would send him limping back to the pits. Within 3 laps of grabbing 2nd place, Wiley had caught the race leader. This time, the line was covered on the climb out of the old hairpin, but there's no stopping an Exocet missile. And by the end of the lap, Wiley was through, 28th to 1st in just 9 laps. Good news, the McEwen KTM had climbed to 15th. Bad news, it was off the road again. A dull afternoon it had not been. He wasn't the only one to attract the yellow flags though. The Tockworth Ginetta of Sarah Moore and Matt Greenwood was out, as was the Team Hard entry of Darron Lewis, suffering rear end damage after battling Mike McCullum's KTM for 5th. McCullum was in the pits with front suspension damage, and the safety car was deployed to allow the recovery of the various vehicles that were now stranded at the side of the track. With Wiley electing to make his mandatory stop, McGregor regained the lead. And it was a lead he would retain following the mid-race stops. One of the retirees had been the HSG Ford Focus. Andy Napier took full advantage to move his Lotus Elise into the lead of Sprint Class 5. And on course for another Sprint Class 3 victory, the Whitebridge Motorsport prepared Aston Martin of lone driver Chris Murphy. In only his 2nd outing in the TCR Golf, Tim Docker had propelled himself into the lead of Sprint Class 4 and 5th place overall within the category. Following that storming charge through the field from Britcar driver of the day Marcus Fothergill, teammate Dave Bennett kept up the good work in the Bespoke Cars Porsche, on course for a Class 2B victory and an excellent 4th place overall in the sprint category. David Mason was in position to take a well-deserved sprint class podium following the various issues they'd suffered throughout the weekend. The JMH Porsche of Michael Igo and Adam Wilcox was heading for 2nd place in the sprint category, so a double podium here to follow on from their double podium at the previous round at Alton Park. And double victory on the cards for Johnny McGregor as he headed for the finish line with a very healthy advantage at the end of the 50-minute sprint race, which was now signalled. Before we hear from the man of the moment, here's confirmation of the result.
That was a really tough race. A lot of oil on the track after the trucks had been out. It was really, really slippery, and again, trying to gauge it with no other cars about was tricky. And Ross came past about 5-6 laps in, I think. Was able to keep up with him, but he did a bit of a better job of getting through the traffic than I did. So, but yeah, we got the win in the end, so it's all good.
The day might have finished for the sprint category drivers, but for those in the endurance class, they were only just approaching the halfway point in their 2-hour race, meaning that it was time for them to start their mandatory pit stops. Having already moved up to second place overall, Sam Randon had now picked up the overall lead when he came in to hand over to teammate Simon Rudd. An excellent debut for the 23-year-old, who was standing in for regular driver Tom Barley.
It was a busy one out there, lots of traffic. Grateful that we can hand over in such a strong position. I mean, I only made my GT debut earlier on this year at this track, but this is my debut in Britcar and in a Ginetta and with Team Hard. Luckily the combination works and we're going really well, so no, I can't be any happier at the minute.
Out of the running though were the championship hopefuls Sean Cooper and Mike McCullum in the track-focused KTM Crossbow.
Well, it was going very, very well. We were leading our class, and then the leader came past me, and the guy I was racing behind me, one of the Ginettas, followed him through, and we had a bit of a coming together, which was unfortunate. I think I came off worse than he did, so bent the steering arm quite badly, and we had to fix that, so it's cost us loads of laps.
Having a very strong race though was the Newbridge Motorsport Porsche Cayman of ex-Caterham racer Matt Topham and Latvian driver Gleb Stepanovs.
It went really well. As I came in, we were second overall, which is, I think, fantastic. And I wasn't expecting that, so I'm happy.
How did the pit stop go? How are you running in the race now?
I think we're still doing really good. Probably not second anymore, but doesn't matter. We're enjoying ourselves. I don't actually want to watch the timings, to be honest. So I'm just waiting for my mate to come back, and we'll enjoy the rest of the evening.
Into the closing stages, and with an advantage of 2 laps over their nearest rivals, Rudd and Randon were on their way to a maiden victory. Somehow, despite a rather interesting start to the race, Ross and Sandy McEwen had survived their various thrills and spills to move up to second place. And there was another standout drive from Class 5 winner Alan James, 5th overall, and once again finishing ahead of many more higher performance cars. A good recovery too from Chris and Mika Brown, coming back from their high-speed spin and puncture to move the jackpot racing BMW into 4th place overall. Topham did a good job to maintain that podium position aboard the Newbridge Motorsport Porsche. Happily, there were no more dramas for the McEwens as they ticked off the laps en route to a maiden Britcar podium, going some way to helping lift the disappointment on the other side of the track-focused garage. In the end, though, a comfortable victory for Simon Rudd, Sam Randon and Team Hard. Just reward for those long hours spent rebuilding the car. Before we hear from our victorious drivers, is confirmation of the endurance category result.
We're over the moon. It's been a really mixed weekend after yesterday's antics, so to reward the boys after all their hard work up at 5 o'clock this morning repairing the car with a win such as that, it couldn't really have gone any better.
This one is for the team today. You know, some of them haven't had any sleep, and they've got the car out, we've won the race, and so yeah, it's for them really.
Despite a poor weekend, Greenwood and Moore still handed the Endurance Championship, but with Team Hard now up to second place and only 19 points adrift. Meanwhile, Igo and Wilcox move into the Sprint Championship lead. Next time, the Dunlop Endurance Championship heads to Snetterton for round 5. Join us there.